Hi, everyone. Welcome to our conversation. I'm here with my mom. And today we are going to talk about creating boundaries around body talk, particularly in a mother daughter relationship, and also just in general with people that you are in deep, close relationships with in your life. So, if you're new to me, I'm Elise Sparks. I'm a movement and body image coach and the creator of the hashtag Be Kind Body Mind. And I basically do that, help people get moving again with ease and without overwhelm, while being really kind to ourselves. So, kind of flipping the fitness industry upside down and approaching movement for all the benefits that it can do for our bodies and our minds, without all the extra punishments, restrictions, counting, all that stuff. I work one on one with people and also group programs. So you can find all that information on my website, elisesparks.com. And today we're talking to my mom, Lynn Sparks, who has a first career as an audiologist and business owner, and a second career as a yoga teacher who specializes in yin yoga and yoga for seniors. She has a ton of experience, and she's just, in my biased opinion, the wisest and most nurturing soul you will ever meet. I feel that way, but also I've seen outside people that have no blood relation to her be attracted to her wisdom and strength and knowledge and intuition. So,
Mhm.
um, really glad to be sharing you with everybody, mom. And the reason why we thought we had talked about having this conversation was leading up to the holidays this year, and basically every year I think about this and see other people um, talking about how to create strong boundaries for yourself and how to talk to other people in your life about how you want to be respected and supported around your body and body image. And I have many things on my website to help with that. And I've also looked to other people to get ideas and comments and tools that you can use for that. And something I noticed this holiday season was, boundaries is kind of a hot topic word right now. And I think that's great. But sometimes what happens is that, there are some phrases that get thrown out, like, just say this. And while I think that can be helpful for some relationships, I think for the relationships that are very real and deep for us, it requires much more of a process and a longer time frame of work together than just saying, one thing at the holiday table. And my mom and I have been through this process. And we have really had our individual things and come together kind of in our relationship, getting into sticky stuff with body image and food and nutrition and exercise together. And I really feel like we have gotten into it. We've gotten into the stickiness. We have gotten through it. And then we have come out on the other side where we've always been very close throughout my whole life. Um, and now we are at a place where we can talk to each other very honestly, very authentically, and do have boundaries in place around what we talk about our bodies with each other. And that I feel like has really, really helped us. And a friend, when I posted about this possibility on Instagram to see if y'all would be interested, a friend said something like, it's very rare to be able to witness two people, particularly in a mother daughter relationship, like go through a shared wound, to be healed and have that strengthen
Mhm.
each other. So, um, I feel like we're not particularly dishing out advice here. We are just sharing our story in hopes that it can be relatable and helpful to wherever you are um, in your relationships. So that was my very long intro. Hi, Mom.
Hi.
So I have shared in my business and what I do for work, I have shared before that I was a dancer, and in my teens, I went on Weight Watchers to lose 30. I lost, ended up losing 30 pounds in 2 months, which I don't recommend because I then got a lot of health issues that took me many, many years to heal. And so that's kind of in a nutshell the story that comes up through my work. And what I think I haven't talked about so much is the relationship that we had during that time and through and after.
Oh.
So to give a little bit more detail there, um, I was a ballet dancer, and I was basically at the point in time where I was deciding if this was a great hobby that I had or if I wanted to try to be a professional dancer. And so I was about 16, I think I would say, after I had started to go through puberty and develop my adult woman body, or closer to my adult woman body at that time, which for the ballet world is disruptive. Because in the ballet world, that especially at that time, which we're talking about 25-ish years ago, um, was not really accepted. So, I was at a point where we were starting to talk about college and whether I should go to liberal arts college or if I should go to a dance conservatory. And I decided that I wanted to go to a dance conservatory. I wanted to try to be a professional dancer. And I think around that time was when, you know, uh, a cultural belief came in, or like what I knew to be true was that I needed to lose weight in order to do that. And so you and I ended up going on Weight Watchers together.
Mhm.
And I think at first that was a really awesome thing for our relationship, which feels a little like weird for me to say right now because
Mhm.
I think the general idea that I come with is that that wasn't a great thing for my life. But at the same time, I think that
Mhm.
at first, you and I had just been going through the teenage years where I was a teenager
Mhm.
and, doing a normal teenage thing, which was
Mhm.
like, you know, not welcoming you into my life
Mhm.
and, eye rolls, which I'm still working on the eye rolls in approaching 40. I'm still working on my eye roll habit. But I think that it actually brought us closer. We developed a tight bond.
Mhm.
And we had it was almost like because of the Weight Watchers point system, which was, I think they have a whole different thing now, but at that point in time, it was like points. And it was like we had almost this secret language together that felt like our special thing.
Mhm.
Um, do you want to
If
add
I could
anything
just,
about that time period?
yeah, during that time period, you also became an only child in the house because your sibling left. So it was just you and me without that um, extra person. And I had gotten very big during that time and was very uncomfortable. And I think you wanted to possibly support me at the same time. And if I remember correctly, we didn't really follow the point system the way it was designed. I think we cut it. I think
Yeah.
we were eating half of the point system,
Well,
you
that's where
know.
I feel like it was almost like became this I think that's why I said secret. Like it became almost like a secret thing that we shared where we
Yeah.
together we
Hmm.
figured out that we could beat the system even
Yeah.
more so. Because I
Yeah.
remember people commenting on my weight loss, um, and me saying, I don't know if I said this out loud to them, but I remember thinking to myself, I was like, "Oh, why didn't I know this before? It's so simple. It's like you exercise more and you eat less."
Eat less.
Like,
Yeah.
it's such a formula that this is so, and to be clear, that's not what I believe now, but that's what
Mhm.
I believed then, that I was like, "Oh, this is so simple." And so we just started cutting the points and cutting the points and cutting the
Mhm.
points.
Mhm. And for me, having come from a long line of dangerously obese women, I was fearful that you would experience the misery that they experienced and that I had experienced throughout a good part of my life. And so when you started to join me on this, it was like, yes, okay, she's going to beat this. You know, she isn't going to live the miserable life that I am. And particularly because you wanted to be a dancer. And to be fair, you have never been obese or, overly overweight, maybe more than you needed to be for a dancer's body. And that was a very puzzling thing. Like, how much as a parent do I support you and delight in seeing you get thinner and thinner because it was my lifelong pain. And I, on the other hand, didn't want to do what was done to me and that watch everything I eat. And I think society as a whole has that same dilemma in that they want you to be healthy. I mean, it's healthier on your joints. It's You're less likely to get COVID, you're less likely to get cancer if you're not overweight. And yet we know for many people, most people, the deprivation type thing only leads to yo-yoing, where you're even worse than you were before when you started. What happened to you is that that did not happen to you for a number of years. You stayed extremely disciplined for a very long time until you reached the point where it was not healthy for you.
Well, I would say I have a few things to say about
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
So let's pick apart some of those points because there was like a
Hmm.
lot of really important information in what you just said.
Hmm.
So I think the first point that you made that's important to make clear is that I have, no matter when
Hmm.
how my weight fluctuated, I have always existed in the world with thin privilege, which is not even a term that I was aware of back then,
Hmm.
but now I understand that. And even in the dance world, even after I went through puberty, like it wasn't, I didn't have a typical ballet dancer's body, but at the same time, I still wasn't, told not to come to class, and I've
Right.
heard stories about that. Like it wasn't like that. And I think, and you can fill in the details here where I might misspeak a little bit, but you you did live growing up and your whole life up until that point, let's say, um, in a world that treated you very differently for the body that you had.
Hmm.
And you
Yes.
did come up against fat phobia in the world
Hmm.
where you were, discriminated is the word that's coming to mind,
Yeah.
or that might not be the right term, but you had experiences where you were not allowed to do things, or you could not shop in stores, or you
Yeah.
maybe had a fear of doing everyday activities that wouldn't support your body.
Hmm. Yeah. And I
And
knew
so,
both extremes. So I was a very good dieter when I dieted. But then I figured it out. I think in the year before this journey of Weight Watchers that you're talking about, I probably gained about 80 pounds in 2 years. That I must have been going through a lot of psychological stuff uh, to do that. And, that's what you lived through. So I must have been I know I was pretty miserable. I was depressed. I was at the point where I had to pretend that a seatbelt fit me in the car. And that's not a way to live when you can't go for a walk with your friends. And I'm an outdoors person. I love to move. I love movement. And I couldn't. I really couldn't. And I I think that you witnessed that, and the bonding that we had for that time was very good. And then if I can take it a bit further, when you began to realize that perhaps it was not healthy, and your dance teacher spoke to you that it wasn't healthy, and I took you to our family physician, and you told her what you were eating, and she assured us both that no, you were fine. You weren't having a problem.
Well, I'm going to insert something here because a missing piece to the story that you're saying is I lost my period very soon after I started going on Weight Watchers.
Mhm.
And, at that point, I was still living at home, so it hadn't been that long yet. But just to get the full picture,
Yeah.
I lost my period, which is called amenorrhea, for 7 years. So I think that's why we went to the doctor.
Yes, yes. And also, I just want to interject there that it wasn't Weight Watchers because we were not following it. We were eating less than they recommend. I just want to stick that in there so people don't think it's a terrible plan because it works for some people, perhaps. I don't know. But
Well, it's still, yeah, I think that it's still part of a diet culture, which is saying
yes,
that
yes,
um, that you need to change your body and you need to do it in a restrictive way.
yeah.
And I
And they
don't
have
think
changed that. They have changed that image somewhat. Anyway, just to say that.
we're gonna
So
get at it. We're gonna
yeah,
get
right
at
now,
it about
right?
Weight Watchers, but that's okay. I think that's okay because these are the conversations that like we have and we have
Yeah,
had where we
yeah,
have different views and we come at it like that.
yeah,
And these are also conversations that you know people who have had a similar experience may be having with their close people as well. So
yeah,
we, still to this day, I think that like this is actually a great example that we didn't even anticipate in this conversation. But this isn't a great example where I got to the point where I pretty much fully reject. Um,
a restrictive plan you're talking about. Maybe just
yes.
yes.
And here's
So
the thing. Here's the thing about that is that I think for some people, brain chemistry, maybe that can work for them to learn about nutritional content.
yeah,
I don't think that having a focus on weight loss through the program, I don't think, and I don't have studies in front of me, but
yeah,
maybe I can put some in the comments, but I
uh,
don't think that, intentional weight loss programs usually uh, result in that in the long
yeah.
term.
No,
And
I
also,
could not agree with you more on that because that is what I have discovered only in the last year or so is that food was never the problem. I thought food was always my problem, and I've just come to see that it's what I was using as a solution, and that you just have to live your life and that obsession about what your body looks like. I realized just in this last year that my obsession about the scale was just as bad as my obsession about the food. And what the scale said determined whether I was happy or not. And that isn't the way to live your life. When you started to realize, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but when you started to realize that this was not healthy for you and you might want to talk about your aha moments. um, I was at that point back again on a very restrictive food plan where I lost weight really rapidly, and we went on a vacation to Belize, and I think that must have been right after you realized that the diet mentality was not for you. And I was still so much into it that I brought a suitcase full of food with me, of canned food, a measuring scale, a steamer. And here we are on vacation for a week. and I'm not going to eat any of the food that's there. I had to bring my food with me. Now, for the first time in my life, I was below my goal weight, and I managed to stay there for 2 to 3 years. But my head, I remember being so pissed off because you and your dad went to a happy hour and I couldn't
Oh,
do it. And I was
I remember this.
starving. Remember, I walked away and went to a hot tub in a resort down the road and you couldn't find me. I
I
was like,
ordered
so,
a I remember this. I ordered a like decadent chocolate smoothie beach cocktail on
yeah,
purpose um
yeah,
to make you
yeah,
upset. Not to make you
yeah,
upset, but I was basically like F you
yeah,
and like watch me order this and I'm going to
yeah,
drink this whole thing.
yeah. And I ran
And
away and cried and sat in the hot tub, and then you guys couldn't find me. You were frantic. And it was that same vacation where I was like, oh, here we are taking her on vacation. I think you were maybe either in college or just out of college, probably just out of college, I think, a couple of years, maybe even. And you seemed to me at first so ungrateful because you wouldn't talk to me. You didn't want to go for a walk with me. You did everything you could to be completely separate. And finally, one day we talked about it on vacation. And you told me that, Mom, I am so close to you that I have to create separation in order for me to find myself and for us to have a relationship. And you told me that it wasn't because you didn't love me, that you loved me very much, but that I invaded your space too much, and that the path that I was on was no longer the path you wanted to be on, and that you purposely needed to create that space. And that really got me thinking at that point. I got
I
it. I had not seen that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's interesting that you feel like that is the tipping point moment. That was tipping point moment for you because
Mhm.
I feel like I remember everything except that conversation um, from that trip. But I feel like at that point in time, it had already been years since I had been saying that to you.
I didn't hear it. I wasn't able to hear it. I
Yeah,
just saw it
and
as rejection. You see, I took it as personal rejection until we had that conversation. And
yeah.
then I began to realize that I was invading your head the same way that my head had been invaded by my mom. And
Well, so I think it's important to kind of make this distinction right now because we naturally went into it, but the progression of doing this together, getting so wrapped up into it that it was like this secret, fun, adventurous thing that we were on, to me getting also concerned for my health and realizing that my mind was getting obsessive and my health was really suffering and pulling away. And so now we've already entered the time period of making the boundaries. And I think that this is what people talk about right now in sort of a flippant way. Like I hear a lot of people talk about like, well, if someone doesn't understand you or doesn't want to, can't, do what you are asking them to do, then just put them out of your life. And like on the one hand, I can see the value in that. And the other hand, I feel like, but let's talk about what that really looks like. What does that
mhm,
really look like to do with
yeah,
someone that you don't want to push out of your life? I never wanted to
yeah,
like we've always had a close, and even it's important to say
mhm,
through the tough time period. I mean, we were still close,
mhm,
but I did have that type of a conversation with you many times on many occasions. It wasn't just like
yes,
a one time, it had to be repeated over
no,
and over and over again. And
absolutely,
I think that you're right, because I have memory of me being even younger, um, in one of our in our child home house, um, being so hysterical and upset because I didn't have the words for it at that time. And I just knew that I needed separation from you. And that was
yeah,
confusing and hurtful because we had, I think, almost gotten into like a BFF, best friends forever
mhm,
situation. And it almost felt like a best friend breakup.
mhm,
And those breakups, I feel like for those of us who have had friend breakups like that, are can sometimes be even more hurtful and challenging than romantic breakups because there's
Mhm.
not really like a pathway for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I remember, having like tearful, hysterical, tearful conversations about it. And then it's interesting that you bring up that point in time because I think that point in time, I had just gotten to the end of my rope with having the conversations. And I physically, like you said, I
Mhm.
physically had to separate from myself from you. I didn't want you to
Yeah.
watch me eat. So I didn't want to have
Yeah.
meals with you. I
Yeah.
didn't want to exercise together so that the power walks that we had always done were not available to us anymore.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
like working out,
Yeah.
I didn't want to work out with you. And
Mhm.
so I felt like I needed to get to the point of physically having that separation.
Yeah.
And I think that turning point was maybe it was more so that I found the words that you mentioned to say,
Mhm.
I love you. I
Yeah.
want you in my life,
Yeah.
but we
It
have to
has to
separate this.
happen. Yeah. And also, it was a couple of years before that that you suggested that I take some yoga classes. And then I started taking yoga classes. So at the same time, I'm reading yoga philosophy, which is still gets me through my roughest times. Just recognizing that the monkey mind that we run by is not the mind that is true or that we have to live by. And all of those thoughts of, she doesn't love me. What did I do wrong? This is the same as my relationship with my mother, where she was in New York, I moved far away. Um, at that moment, that tipping point moment was when I realized, oh, we can change this. This is good. This is not a harmful thing. This is a woman who's finding herself, you, and this is a woman who has found the words, found herself enough to be able to come to me and tell it to me in a way that, duh, finally, I get it. There's a change that needed to happen here for us both to grow.
Yeah.
Not just you, but for us both to grow.
And I think that is really the transition because I know you and I were talking earlier, like, well, how did we get from that point, which was really, really hard
Mhm.
and very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And over time, it wasn't just this one incident. This we're talking
Mhm.
about a period of time in our life.
Mhm.
So how did we get from there to bridge that? We're in it
Mhm.
now. We're going through it, and
Yeah.
then how did we get
Mhm.
out? And
Well, I can
I
tell you a
think,
couple of other things if I can go ahead. Uh, my mom was dying, and she was dying of tongue cancer, which I know you've shared, which is that you don't want to do that if you can help it. It's an extremely hard way to die. But my mom, in her dying weeks, said to us that she would have done that again in order to live her last years in a thin body. And that was another tipping point for me. And then I sat on the edge of her bed just a few days before she died. And this was kind of the tail end of my that very restrictive diet. And I had begun to put a little bit of weight back on. And she said to me, "You better be careful. It looks like you're climbing again." And I just like, this is her mentality. Like, what a tortured way to live your life. To have that be the most important thing, to know that when you walked in the room, the first thing that happened is she looked you up and down. And I'm not blaming my mom because my mom was a wonderful, wonderful person and I loved her dearly. It's what she went through, the pain she went through, she did not want me to go through.
yeah.
And
And I always want to really respect her when I tell that story because that is how I remember everything also that you said. And I have told that story publicly before. And I think truly for her, it whether she was a silver linings person, I think she was to make
mhm,
see silver linings in tough subjects. I think she was, and I also do think like I it's almost like I don't want to take that truth away from her that I feel like for
No,
her,
it was.
it was
Hmm.
an amazing thing that she never thought that she would see herself in
Hmm.
her life.
Hmm.
Um, so I feel like it's a duality. It's like a both
Yeah.
and. It's
Yeah.
important to give her grace to like let her have that moment
Yes,
and
absolutely.
also be able to take the repercussions that we felt from it
Hmm.
and then
Yeah. Um,
change the conversation.
the other thing I want to say on that is through the years of doing one type of diet after another, from Richard Simmons to ideal weight to hypnosis to whatever I've done, pills, diet pills at 12, whatever I've done. Now I really lost where I was going with that. Give me a second.
Whatever you've
But
done, all the things you've done, there seems to be a common thread or something.
yeah, yeah. So the mindset is if you're not dieting like that, it's not right. Like how could you buy that double fudge drink you bought, whatever? And when you started to have this a healthier outlook on life, this is about the time you probably started to develop your wellness business also. I would watch you eat and think, oh my God, she's eating normally. That's like what normal people eat, not people who diet. And like you looked great. You look better than you ever, not, you always look good, but I mean, you
We're
glowed.
getting into
So
slippery territory.
yeah, no. I mean, you were obviously, it was
Here's where
working
this
for
is an
you.
example. This is a good example. So I catch her.
Yeah,
This is it in the moment, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
start to catch you when you start to put a qualitative assessment.
yes, yeah.
I don't know if that's the right word, but
I know what
when
you mean.
you
Yeah,
make a comment or a judgment.
yes.
Um, so if this happened not while we were recording, I would probably first resort to teenager self and roll my eyes.
Uh,
Well,
yeah.
we can rewatch it. I probably did roll my eyes. So that's my
Yeah,
that's like, but that's important, I think, because that's my signal to myself that I'm not comfortable with something that you're saying or what I can tell, what I feel like you're about to say.
yeah.
And so I'm sort of dissecting this in the moment because I feel like
Uh-huh.
this is the meat of like what people really want to know. How do we actually do this in the moment?
Right.
So let's just take this moment. So you're starting to say it's about the past. However, you're starting to say what you think about my body. And I'm starting to get uncomfortable. And so
Yeah.
I roll my eyes
Uh-huh.
and then I just stopped you. I paused
Uh-huh.
you
Hmm.
from what you were going to say. And, I'm on the spot. So I don't know exactly in real life what I would say right now. I
Hmm.
would probably let that slide because you're telling a story about the past. But at the same time, I might say, um, what would I say to you in this instant? I would say, I want to make this really real because what I want to say is like, Mom, this is starting to make me uncomfortable. Like, I don't really like it when
Yeah.
you make comments about my body. I guess that's what
Right.
I would say.
Would say. And then what I would say, which is what I'm going to say, is I didn't mean to make a statement about your body. What I meant to say was I saw that you were really happy and that life was working for you in the way that you wanted it to work, at least from what I could see. And I saw that you had found a balance of exercise, of food that seemed to make you glow. And I'm not referring to the size that you were, I'm referring to no one in my family had ever just eaten what food there is to eat. You know, I've never been able to do that, and you began to teach me that just by noticing. And I know I'm not supposed to be noticing, but you just can't help. But I said, oh, how, okay, so you can live a healthy balanced life without eating just cardboard. but I still didn't know how to do that. It took me a long time still of doing that and of learning how to live in my body, because if I do eat what feels natural and right to me, and I'm talking about like not binging my brains out, not starving myself, not counting anything, not weighing myself, I probably will be rounder than your average model person, obviously, but that's who I am. And that's fine. I feel good. I can do everything that I want to do now. Um, and I have learned that, but watching you learn it, and I don't know your whole path on how you learned it because we didn't really talk about that, but I could see the transformation. I could see that it no longer seemed to be an issue that you were dealing with.
So where are we now? We got into it, we got through it, and where we are now, I
Sorry.
say would be practicing that for so long, practicing what we talked about
Hmm.
before and what we just tried to model in the moment,
Hmm.
practicing that for so long that that started to become the natural thing, that those type
Yeah.
of conversations. And then I think a second thing, and I want to kind of start to wrap this up, so I don't think we'll go very deep into this, but I think another thing that happened, like you mentioned, I started helping other people, and also you started helping other people
Yeah.
in your own way. So I think that us breaking up and then coming back together, we both still needed to talk about it.
Yeah.
But what happened was we didn't we stopped talking about it. Um, well, that's not true. We didn't stop talking about it to each other. We stopped talking about it in the way that we had been talking about it to
Yeah.
each other, and we used what we wanted to learn, and we started helping other people. And then
Yes.
when we
What?
came together, we could speak more directly, clearly,
Hmm. Hmm.
respectful, boundary
Yeah.
about it. And people who might know me and what I say in my business, might know that I'm not a fan of before after situations, because I feel like there's always an after the after. And so what I want to also make clear is that, as you can probably see from watching us talk right now, it's not like, oh, now that's done and that's wrapped up in a bow and that
Never.
throw it over our shoulder. It's like something that we know happens between us and we keep on coming back to, and we keep on coming back to. And
Hmm.
um now there's a next generation involved, so now we keep coming back that, to what we are, how we're talking and how we're showing up for the next generation. So I'm only saying that to say that I don't really believe that it's just like a one and done thing, that it's a process
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
someone who you are this close to,
Yeah.
that it's an ongoing thing. But I think the reason why we're able to have this conversation and record it is that really sticky, tough portion of it was so long ago, and we've
Yeah.
done so much work
Hmm.
um, on it. So
May
let's
I?
go to
May I just? Do you mind if I say something else here?
yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
to go back to the best friend thing. I think we actually have developed something where we have a very healthy mother-daughter friendship, and we are very close, but we know that it's not symbiotic, and that you have your life and I have my life. And right shortly after that vacation, that was the tipping moment for me in Belize, you and I went to Costa Rica together. And that was a challenge because it was just the two of us. And we both gave each other lots of space. And it was so much fun. We shared a little apartment. You took your yoga classes, I took mine. A couple of times we took one together. We ate dinner together most nights, not lunch. We didn't ask where we were going for breakfast. We each had our own territory. And that was another huge step because we had
Yeah,
learned at that point how to be together, how to be friends, and how you want to travel with a friend. Like,
I had
relationships get sticky when you're in each other's head all the time.
I had forgotten about that. I'm glad you brought that up because I was trying to think, like, on this third leg of it, what really was a turning point there. And I agree with you that I think I did ask before we went, because if you remember correctly, I was supposed to go with a boyfriend.
Oh yeah.
And I was supposed to go with a boyfriend, and we broke up right
Uh,
before the trip. And I was
yeah.
like, I'm not letting this trip go.
Uh-huh.
So I think he maybe offered if you
I
wanted to
don't
come with me.
remember. I don't
I don't
remember.
remember, but
Yeah.
whatever. We went,
Uh-huh.
we took advantage of the free trip to Costa
Uh-huh.
Rica,
Uh-huh.
because we had one my ex-boyfriend and I had one trip to
Oh,
Costa Rica. So
uh,
I was like, well, yeah, it makes no sense to not go to this. And I do think that we set up the structure before we went. I'm pretty
mhm,
sure that we had a
mhm,
conversation. I said, yes, we can go together.
mhm.
Um, and I can't be with you all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that that was the first time that I felt like you heard me say that. Not the first time, but the first time it
Mhm,
transitioned into this new phase
mhm.
of you heard me say that and you were like, okay. And you weren't hurt by that. You were just like,
No.
of course,
Mhm.
that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, and it
Um,
was wonderful for me too because I was a busy working woman. I had, raised 2 kids. I have a husband. It was wonderful for me to have this alone time by myself as well. And then no, we'd leave each other little notes. Hey, do you want to meet up for this? Or and it what took our relationship to a new level.
yeah, I agree about that. Thanks, Mom. Thanks for having this conversation
Thanks for
um,
doing it with me.
with me and sharing. And, it's, I'm realizing that we actually have these conversations a lot. And it's kind of nice to be able to share um, what we talk about with other people and hopefully help some people. So we would actually love to know how this all resonated with you, what your relationship around boundaries, around body talk come up for you in your close relationships, in your distant relationships with your kids. Um, so leave us a comment to let us know if you have anything to add to the conversation, or more questions for us. We'll come back for a part two. And we'd love to hear. So leave that below. All right. Bye, Mom.
Thank you. Bye.
See you later.
All right.